serve this lovely little morning dove. So I'll go with one of the witch hazels. So what I'll tell people is take a plant, pay attention to what it is, because some of them have tags, or you can ask somebody, really exciting. This one's a witch hazel. I know where I want it.
No, I don't Brookline.
No.
Some people did, some people did.
Yeah, I'll just be cleaning those up after if we do. We don't really want any inorganic matter in the soil. So we'll grab the plant that we want. I will take a hole for it. So, you know, exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Also, just to keep in mind, like we packed all this soil earlier in the week, but it did rain a little bit, so it is a little compacted in some places. If we need help for people digging holes, especially like younger people or anyone who's struggling, that might be kind of part of our order of operations. Some people just like focus on digging for a while, swap out with dunking, etc. We have a nice hole for our witch hazel. It's about the size of the plant. We will do step 2, which is dunking. At some point, I will maybe have folks move the tea a little closer to our first planting sections. But for now, we can feed over to our dunking.
Maya, who's the tea? Is it from Coolidge?
No, this is actually from Cambridge.
Oh, okay.
They have their own brewing operation, and they were kind enough to just like give us
city? Or?
Yeah. So next step, we want to make sure as we dunk, we just have what we're putting in the forest. So we can remove our tags and our husks if they have them. And we'll start collecting piles of putts and trash near our planting sections as well. We will dunk our plant. Here we really want to submerge completely fully. And see how it's all bubbling up? We're just letting all of that like bubble. It takes honestly about like 30 seconds or maybe more for it to stop. And that's just like the aeration of all of those little air pockets in the container just filling with water and displacing the air. So that's making sure it's like soaked completely thoroughly. After it stops bubbling, we'll drain it. And here we kind of want to drain as thoroughly as possible. Again, it's a little bit of a long process. It's like, can be tiresome, but we just want as much reuse as possible. Obviously, like the excess will just go into the soil, which is fine, but we want to make sure that by the end of the day, we still have compost tea to dunk in and don't have to water it down too much. So, just making sure that drains like nice and thoroughly. And again, this is something that a couple folks could just like pre-dunk plants and kind of stay on the edges there. So once we have it kind of nice and set, we'll move it over to the hole that we dug.
Bye, Maya.
Bye, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Come back. Okay, and now we want to remove really carefully from our plant. In general, when we have people move these around, try not to pull by the stem, but instead hold by the container that you're in. And kind of just wiggle it out a little bit. I definitely should have been wearing my gloves for this part, but that's okay. Got like a nice bit of potting soil here. Sometimes the roots are a little compressed around the edges, like they'll take the shape of the container, so you just want to like loosen that up really nicely and kind of place in the hole that you've dug. In this case, we need a lot of that extra soil back and kind of place it gently into place. You really want that level with the ground or slightly raised. We don't want to be creating like any like obvious mounds, but we certainly don't want it sunk into the ground. So either at level or slightly raised. And just pat it gently into place. We don't need to hammer it in, step it in, shovel it in. All of that compression can be kind of bad for that budding root system. And it will get mulched, and that'll kind of add some extra weight and compression anyway. But we just want to make sure it's stably in place. And now we have a beautiful witch hazel, our first plant in the forest. Really excited. It's all set and ready to go. So that is kind of in a nutshell the process. in this case, it was the first plant. It was easy to find a spot. In general, as we fill up the forest, the thing that we most miss out on is density. It's really densely planted. So we want the holes that we dig to be about 18 inches kind of from the next tree. So stem to stem, we're looking for about 18 inches apart. And a good metric for that is on an adult arm, that's elbow to fingertip. So in particular, if you're kind of watching people plant or helping people find spots, that's a pretty good metric to go on. We're also trying to roughly not create clusters of species. They've already been distributed according to that idea. But if you can, don't put 5 of the same type in a row or in a circle. Instead, we're kind of trying to mix them in terms of biodiversity. Again, we'll make sure kind of each section is staged this way, but in general, along the edges of the forest, we're having our lower growing shrubs, our understory, kind of dominating the composition, and then we have more of our taller growing trees dominating the composition in the middle. And that is it. I think one of the most important things as we go is really try and encourage others to, and yourself, step with care, plant with love, say nice things and wishes to your plants, pay attention to what you're planting, write it down kind of at the tables, and make sure you take some of that info with you.
Question, you mentioned a row. Is that the most efficient way you do a row and then kind of stagger the next row, or do you pick a corner and work out?
Precisely linear planting, but in general, just so we don't over traffic the site, it's best if we move back to front and kind of inside out. However, that's just so we don't box ourselves in. And we will go a section at a time, again, starting at A and B, then moving to this section that I just planted in, C, D, E, and then our buffer zones.
How much plants per square yard approximately?
It's about 3 per square meter, which should be about 3 per square yard.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, I'll finish up with a smaller group in. Yeah, sorry. Do you have a question?
I can do it. I can ask you when you.
Okay, great. And then we will give general instructions right at 10, which is around the corner. Yeah.
If anyone